One of the bandits kicked him again, laughing as the human's body slumped against the cold metal wall, ribs grinding beneath torn fabric. "You hear that, monkey? Earth send us their janitor." The others roared, clanking metal mugs and howling like hyenas. But the human didn't move. He didn't flinch. He just blinked slowly, blood drying on his jaw. No emotion. No fear. Just that same stillness that made even the thick-skinned among them hesitate, if only for a second. They didn't know it yet, but their joke had an aim. And Earth had already replied to their broadcast. 2 words. Send him. The prison cruiser Vexmal was a floating scrapyard barely held together by rust, duct tape, and attitude. Its crew of galactic bandits, most of them rejected mercs and smugglers with more pride than hygiene, had made a business of raiding minor Earth convoys and intercepting escape pods after battles. That's how they found him. Alone, surrounded by wreckage. No weapon. No armor. Just a man slumped against a scorched bulkhead with more dead aliens than living ones in his immediate area. They thought they'd gotten lucky. An unguarded human survivor? Earth's pride had fallen lower than they'd thought. Varkal, the self-proclaimed commander of the Vexmal, loved nothing more than breaking spirits. And this one was already half broken. He didn't speak when they stripped him. Didn't beg when they chained him to the wall in the lower deck. Didn't even grunt when they threw food at his feet. The silence, at first amusing, began to feel like defiance. So they tried to draw him out? They laughed. They spat. They staged mock trials in the mess hall where they'd debate which Earth insult he resembled most. Varkal's favorite theory was that Earth had finally given up and sent them someone from their janitorial division. "You can tell by the dead look in his eyes," he declared once, waving a crusty spoon. "He's seen things. Toilets. Bureaucracy. Real war." Still, the man remained silent. Gorn, a slime-blooded brute with a cybernetic arm, tried to provoke a reaction by pretending to cry in front of him. He mimicked Earth children, squealing and wailing, saying, "Oh no, my planet!" before hurling a tin plate at the man's head. It hit. The human blinked. Nothing more. That's when the rest started making bets. Some said he was mute. Others thought he was mentally broken. One whispered maybe he was some failed Earth experiment, a clone gone wrong. Either way, they were sure of one thing: Earth hadn't responded to their message. Not yet. The Vexmal's communications room was a hot mess of stolen tech. The crew had sent a broadcast across multiple frequencies, a taunting message to Earth showing the human shackled and bruised in the background while Varkal waved a cracked bottle of Terran whiskey. "Look what we caught! A real live Earthling! Looks like your war heroes got softer than foam biscuits." No response came. They waited hours. Then a day. Then, just as they were about to delete the transmission out of boredom, a reply arrived. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a video. It was a packet of code embedded with 2 English words, translated automatically by the ship's system. Send him. At first, they thought it was a glitch. Some crew members laughed. Others stared. One unlucky translator tried digging into the metadata, looking for context, encryption, anything more. His terminal shut down mid-process. Sparks flew from the wall. The lights flickered once. Then stabilized. They joked, nervously, that Earth must have sent back sarcasm. Varkal played it off cool. Send him where, huh? To bed? To space? To fetch their slippers? The next morning, the cage was open. No one had opened it. At least, not officially. The security footage showed the cell at 0200 hours. Locked. Intact. Then a flicker of static. For 3 seconds the feed went black. When it came back, the cell door was twisted outward. Bent metal. One guard's boot lay nearby, empty. No blood. No screams. Just the silence. They sounded the alert. All non-essential crew were locked in quarters. Varkal ordered a sweep of the lower deck. 3 mercs with pulse rifles entered first. They didn't return. The 4th tried calling them through the intercom. A screech of feedback answered him, followed by a quiet voice he didn't recognize. 3 down. By hour 5, the crew stopped laughing. The human didn't use guns. Or blades. Or grenades. The bodies they recovered had no burns. No cuts. Just cracked bones and shattered spines, like something had hit them with the force of a gravity hammer but left no trace of the weapon. Some were found with their own weapons snapped in half, bent into useless shapes. One of them, a hardened bounty tracker named Celltrax, had curled into the fetal position and died of cardiac arrest, with no wounds at all. The medbot said his fear response had overloaded his implants. Varko gathered the senior crew. He paced. He cursed. This is Earth's fault. They trained him for this. Psychological warfare. That's what this is. One of the techs suggested venting the lower decks. He can't survive vacuum. Varko considered it. Then the lights dimmed again. Every screen on the bridge lit up with one image, the crew's own recorded footage from earlier, laughing, mocking, jeering at the man. The audio played on repeat. Their own voices. Their own cruelty. Varko unplugged the console in a panic. The image stayed. The AI, an old stolen corporate build named MARNX, spoke up for the first time in weeks. Its voice had always been monotone and bored. This time, it sounded amused. You should not have laughed, it said. Then it went silent. They tried to locate him again through thermal scanners, but he didn't show up. All they got were cold zones, patches of the ship where temperature dropped below freezing without explanation. They found frost on the walls. Frost. Inside a cruiser with failing life support. That's when Varko snapped. He screamed into the open mic system, yelling, "What do you want?" No response. Only the faint creak of footsteps in the overhead vents. Panic spread like a virus. No one wanted to go anywhere alone. The crew began forming pairs. Then groups. Then squads. Everyone started whispering stories about Earth's Black Ops programs. Sleeper soldiers. Mind-broken weapons. One theory said he wasn't human at all, just a skin suit built to trap overconfident captors. Someone even asked if Earth had created a weapon that wanted to be captured. Varko stopped sleeping. He watched the cameras, eyes red and twitching. And each time he blinked, he swore he saw him. Not clearly. Just flashes. A reflection. A shadow. A man standing still at the end of a hallway one moment and gone the next. He ordered a perimeter lockdown, but that only confirmed what he feared most. The man wasn't trying to escape. He was still inside. And he was hunting. The Vexmo's hull groaned under the pressure of its own paranoia. Every creak, every hiss of a vent, now sounded like a warning. The crew moved like ghosts, huddling in pairs, whispering behind closed bulkheads. Nobody wanted to be on patrol alone. The man they once mocked now haunted their ship, turning their bravado into fear. Varko paced the command bridge, bloodshot eyes fixed on the main console, where every deck report looked more like an obituary list. 7 more were missing. Not dead. Not confirmed. Just gone. No screams. No signs of struggle. Just empty uniforms and flickering lights where they last stood. In a desperate move, Varko issued transfer orders. The prisoner, if he could still be called that, was to be relocated to the bounty Lord Reshvan Prime. They would hand him over in exchange for credit, clearance, and distance from whatever curse had slipped aboard. The drop shuttle was prepped, and 4 of Varko's best sentinels were assigned to the escort detail. The plan was simple: capture, contain, deliver. But when they arrived at the designated cargo hold, they found the shuttle doors already open. The hangar bay was drenched in silence. One of the guards stepped inside and didn't come out. Another peeked in after him and saw nothing but an empty space and the word him etched into the wall by some crude object, possibly a broken bone or metal shard. The crew scrambled to lock down the hangar. It was too late. The internal sensors started picking up flickers of motion in multiple locations, far apart, but never overlapping. Either he was faster than anything they'd ever seen or there were more of him. Some crew muttered about cloning. Others whispered about neural illusions. One medic quietly suggested that their prisoner might be causing mass hallucinations through some unknown psychological weapon Earth had deployed. But even he couldn't explain the broken bodies found folded in ventilation shafts, or the hollowed stares of the surviving officers, their minds too fractured to form sentences. Varkle began to notice a pattern. The human wasn't killing at random. He was targeting specific crew members, those who'd mocked him the most. Every man or woman who had stood front and center during that initial broadcast, who had laughed or touched him, was vanishing first. Some of them had their names etched beside their bodies, scratched into nearby walls or cargo crates, often alongside words they themselves had said. One wall simply read, "You called me Earth's dog, remember?" Beside it lay a man with his neck twisted backward, eyes wide in frozen apology. With mounting dread, Varkle turned to the ship's logs and began reviewing the security footage of the day they captured him. Each moment they jeered, each taunt thrown his way, played on repeat through his bloodshot vision. He paused when he noticed something odd. In every clip, the prisoner's eyes were focused, not at the ground, not at his chains, but at each speaker, memorizing their faces, their voices, their words. He had recorded them all without a camera. His brain, it seemed, was doing the cataloging. Every insult was a name on a list. And he was crossing it off one by one. Desperate for answers, Varkle ordered the ship's AI, MARNX, to scan for any Earth-based records on their prisoner. The AI hesitated, something it had never done before. Then a file came up, partially corrupted and mostly redacted. It had no name, no age, no rank. Just the designation, Protocol Reaper. The file contained no combat footage, only aftermaths, destroyed outposts, derelict fleets, scorched bunkers with no survivors. A warning at the bottom read, "If captured, deny involvement. Do not negotiate. Do not retrieve. Do not follow. Send him." The message chilled Varkle deeper than anything else. Earth had planned this. They'd expected capture. They'd known he would be mocked, prodded, treated like a broken man. And they had counted on it. This wasn't a prisoner of war. This was the war. And they had delivered it straight into the belly of the ship. Panic erupted across the Vexma. Crew members abandoned their posts, locking themselves in storage compartments, praying that hiding would spare them. Others began fleeing toward the escape pods, only to find the launch bays sealed. One engineer managed to override the system, until the pod's door jammed mid-seal and the outer hull blew open, ejecting him into the cold with a silence that felt like judgment. The remaining crew heard the alarm blare for exactly 3 seconds before it stopped. No one knew if it was shut off or if someone had silenced it manually. Some of the braver mercenaries tried forming kill squads. They combed the lower decks with rifles and scanners, calling out coordinates and checkpoints. One squad reported visual contact. A single figure at the end of the hallway, just standing. They opened fire. The hallway filled with smoke, alarms, and the clatter of shells. When it cleared, the man was gone. All that remained was one of their own hanging upside down from the ceiling, strapped in his own armor, a note pinned to his chest using a blade bent into a perfect hook. It read 10 shots. None hit. By now, everyone accepted the truth. He wasn't running. He was cleansing. The ship was a hunting ground, and they were the prey. Varkle's leadership collapsed under the weight of guilt and fear. His second-in-command turned on him, blaming him for capturing the man in the first place. A fistfight broke out in the command center, leading to a blaster misfire that cooked half the navigational team. Systems went dark. Hull integrity dropped. The ship began drifting. Varkle locked himself in the bridge, shotgun in hand, watching static flicker across the monitors. Each flicker showed glimpses of the man. A face reflected in the dark. A silhouette moving behind flickering lights. In one feed, Varkle saw his own face with someone standing behind him. He spun around. Nothing. His own breath betrayed him, shaky and shallow. He whispered into the mic, not as a commander, not as a warrior, but as a terrified man, asking what the human wanted. The answer came not through words, but through the ship's PA system. It replayed a clip from their original broadcast, the part where Varkle said, "Earth must be sending their janitor." Then it repeated his laugh. Over and over. Then silence. The lights dimmed again. And this time, they didn't come back. The darkness wasn't just physical now. It had settled into their minds, infecting logic, twisting instincts, turning even trained killers into wide-eyed children who flinched at shadows. Somewhere in the silence, someone screamed. Not a short scream either, the kind that bursts out and ends with a bang, but a long, drawn-out wail that made every crew member stop breathing. It came from the upper ventilation grid, an area no one had dared to enter since the doors first locked and the scanners began failing. A team of 4 had gone up there to reboot the ship's emergency relays. None had returned. Until now. But only in voice. Varkle stood alone in the bridge, face hollow, knuckles white around the barrel of a plasma shotgun he hadn't loaded properly. The system consoles flickered now and then, displaying fragments of old footage. His own face caught mid-laughter. Gorn throwing food. Cell tracks, imitating human sobs. Every scene that played across the walls was a memory he didn't want to revisit, but the ship refused to let him forget. It had become a mirror for their cruelty, and now it played their sins back to them in grainy clips and broken audio, like a haunted projector refusing to shut off. Below deck, a group of survivors had huddled together in the infirmary, barricading the entrance with storage units and medical beds. One of them had activated the backup monitor, desperate for any signal from the outside galaxy. Static. Then suddenly a voice. Not from Earth. Not from any Federation outpost. It was Varkle's own voice, played back through the comm system, repeating the phrase, "He's just a broken Earthling." The lights in the infirmary cut out one by one. Then the breathing started. Soft. Close. Behind the wall. A quiet thud followed, like someone testing the barrier's strength. The silence afterward was worse than the sound. On the far side of the ship, near the engines, 2 engineers tried rerouting power manually. They crawled into the maintenance shafts with tools and old schematics, hearts pounding in sync with the dull hum of malfunctioning lights. One of them paused when he saw something scratched into the inner wall of the duct. He squinted closer. It was his name. Just his first name. Nothing else. When he turned to show the other, he found the shaft empty. No noise. No movement. Only a single screwdriver slowly rolling toward him, as if pushed by nothing. Back on the bridge, Varkle stared at the file again. Protocol Reaper. He didn't believe in myths. But this wasn't a myth anymore. It was walking through his ship. It was removing his crew one by one, not like a machine but like a predator. Slow. Deliberate. Merciless. He knew now that the original message from Earth had never been sarcasm. It was a command. Send him. Not send him home. Not send him back. Just send him. Into their hands. Into their walls. Into their arrogance. He was Earth's answer to mockery. Their final word. The remaining security team tried to rally. 4 survivors in full combat gear stormed the lower cargo deck, yelling into their radios and kicking open storage compartments. They shouted challenges, dared him to face them. They said Earth's dog had gone quiet. Said he was afraid now. For a moment, it felt like old times. Steel in their chests. Guts in their voices. Until the first one screamed and didn't stop. The rest fired blindly into the smoke that poured from the broken vents. One managed to radio back. It's not a man, it's not a man. Then silence again. Varkle watched their life signs blink out, one by one. The AI finally spoke, its voice low and mechanical, no longer bored. It asked a simple question. Shall I unlock the command log for the Earth signal? Varkle hesitated, unsure if it was a trap or salvation. He nodded. A new message appeared. The original Earth transmission, broken into code fragments. One line decrypted. Do not provoke. Do not contain. Do not return. Earth knew exactly what it was sending. They didn't want him back. He wasn't a soldier they'd lost. He was a fire they'd released. Varkle leaned forward and whispered into the bridge mic. I surrender. He paused, then added, I admit it. We mocked him. Hurt him. Treated him like a thing. A joke. I didn't know. I didn't know what he was. Please. Please stop this. The bridge stayed silent. Then the monitors flickered. A new image appeared. It was Varkle again. But not laughing. It was the recording from just now. His surrender. Playing on loop. And behind him in the grainy footage, just barely visible, was a shadow moving closer, silent as breath. The rest of the crew had vanished. Those who hadn't died had gone into hiding. Some whispered about escape pods again. One brave soul tried overriding the main bay doors, only to find the interface replaced by a single line of text. He's not done yet. One crew member, curled in a fetal position near the water tanks, began muttering stories he had heard about Earth. About failed peace talks. About diplomats who never made it home. About missions where no war was declared and yet ships were found floating dead, systems wiped, nothing but a single line carved into the walls. Send him. In the dimmed engine room, a survivor found a log etched into the console with a scalpel. Not carved out of anger. Carved slowly. Neatly. As if with care. It read, I gave you a chance. You laughed. Below it, the survivor found the faces of the dead projected onto the walls, their last expressions captured not in terror but in disbelief. No one had seen him come. No one had heard him leave. The Reaper didn't stalk with boots or weapons. He simply appeared. And unmade what had once been whole. Varkle locked the bridge from the inside, speaking only to himself now. His voice cracked, hands trembling over the trigger of his weapon. I wanted credits, that's all. One prisoner. Just one. That's all. I didn't know. He kept repeating it, like prayer or confession. The monitors showed only darkness now. Except one. A hallway camera flickered on. It showed a figure standing still at the far end. Then walking. Slowly. Closer. No sound. No rush. Just steps. Intentional. Measured. The hallway stretched behind him, empty. The ship creaked with every motion. Then the screen went black. And Varkle knew. He had heard the last footsteps he'd ever hear. The ship felt heavier now, as if gravity itself had thickened with dread. Every corridor stretched longer, every light that flickered overhead seemed more like a signal than a failure. Somewhere in the silence, something moved, always just out of sight, always one step behind. The Vexmaw, once a proud beast of stolen tech and swaggering crew, now drifted like a derelict, haunted by the consequence of its arrogance. Varkle hadn't spoken in hours. His voice had dried out. His hands trembled too much to reload his weapon. And still, he stood at the center of the bridge, waiting for the thing he once laughed at to arrive. Elsewhere, the last remnants of the crew were spiraling into madness. One had carved circles into his own arm, whispering about the ship breathing. Another barricaded himself in the medbay freezer, trying to drop his body temperature to match the scanner's cold zones, hoping the thing wouldn't notice him. He never had time to test the theory. The door stayed shut after he entered, and no one heard from him again. Someone tried to initiate a distress signal to nearby pirate enclaves, rerouting power from the backup batteries. The message went out, scrambled through static and broken data. But when they reviewed the transmission log, the signal had been intercepted. Not by another ship. From inside. The log showed that the transmission had been rerouted directly to Earth. No one could explain how Earth responded so quickly. No one understood how it bypassed the damaged comms relay or how the message returned in less than a second. It was short. Just 3 words this time. Status, in progress. The crew had lost control of the ship's navigation systems. MRNX, the AI, now served a different master. The voice it once used, flat, practical, indifferent, was now colder, filtered through something older than programming. Whenever a command was entered, the AI would pause, then reply with a question that no one wanted to answer. Do you believe this is still your ship? Most tried to ignore it. The few who answered heard only silence in return. Then the lights would dim. And something would vanish. In the engine deck, a pair of scavenger twins had taken cover behind the fuel core, believing that its radiation would mask their thermal signature. They whispered about a plan, something involving venting plasma through the outer tubes to create a distraction. It might have worked. They never got that far. One of them leaned out to check the pressure valve and didn't come back up. His brother found him curled inside the access panel, mouth agape, eyes frozen mid-blink, and every bone in his right arm turned to powder without any break in the skin. The plasma controls had been tampered with, rerouted to seal from the outside. Above them, in the crew quarters, the beds remained untouched. Personal items were still neatly arranged. A sketchpad from a junior hacker showed a cartoon of the Earthling in chains, surrounded by alien caricatures holding confetti and weapons. It had been drawn just days ago. The page was now torn, the rest of the drawings gone, replaced by a message written in thick dark ink. You celebrated too soon. The life support system began acting strangely. Not failing outright, but adjusting. The oxygen levels dipped ever so slightly. Enough to blur vision. Enough to tire the muscles. Not enough to kill, just enough to make running impossible. Varkle noticed it first. He tried walking from the bridge to the command deck below, but halfway through the stairwell he felt like he was wading through syrup. His head buzzed. He heard his own voice behind him. Not echoed. Repeated. The words he'd shouted on day one, played back through some invisible speaker, right into his ear. His hands gripped the rail and he sank down to one knee, panting, and for a moment he swore he felt someone watching from the stairwell above, though there was no sound. No footsteps. Just pressure, like a presence made of weight. He returned to the bridge and sealed the doors again. But even the act of sealing had become meaningless. The human had walked through locked doors before. Bent them open. Or worse, never touched them at all and still ended up inside. No one knew how he moved. Cameras didn't track him. Audio systems only picked up his work after it was done. And those who claimed to see him said he didn't walk like a man anymore. He drifted, like a shadow, trailing silence in his wake. A lone crew member named Jenda tried to send another message off-ship, not to Elias this time but to anyone who would listen. Her message was honest, desperate, raw. She admitted everything. Said they had mocked a man they didn't understand. That they had been warned. That Earth had responded with a thing they called human but had clearly forged into something far crueler. Her voice cracked as she spoke. The transmission never left the ship. But it played on every internal screen at the same time, looping for hours until even her screams became background noise. Varkle eventually stopped trying to fight back. He slumped in the command chair, shotgun beside him, helmet off, sweat drying on his scalp. He was no longer waiting to survive. He was waiting to be judged. And the judgment came slowly, step by step. It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't loud. The door didn't blast open, alarms didn't scream. The air changed, thickened, as if all the oxygen had stepped aside for something else to enter. And then he was there. The man. He was no longer bruised. No longer chained. His face was still silent, still calm. But his eyes had become something else entirely. They were not angry. Not vengeful. Just focused. Unchanging. As if the soul inside him had long since stopped asking why. Varkle didn't beg. Not anymore. He only asked one thing. Why me? The man tilted his head, and for the first time since stepping onto the ship, he spoke. You laughed first. Then he crossed the distance in less than a breath. Varkle didn't scream. No one ever heard a sound. The ship's external lights flickered back on after 12 hours of blackout. No distress signals. No further messages. Only a silent rerouting of navigation protocols. And they next logged a single new destination. Unknown sector. Locked coordinates. Manual override denied. No crew logs updated. No heartbeat signatures detected. The Vexma began to move on its own, drifting smoothly toward an uncharted region of space. And in the void where command orders once lived, a new entry was etched into the system registry. Final status confirmed. Cleaning done. Across the outer fringe of galactic traffic lanes, whispers traveled faster than sanctioned transmissions. Rumors of the Vexmaw's disappearance had already reached back-alley data brokers and pirate dens long before any official registry marked the ship as lost. The most feared crew in the quadrant, gone without a trace. No explosion. No black box. Just silence. The last known broadcast was a partial message intercepted by a fringe smuggler rig, containing only 3 distorted words: "Send him." At first, the receiving crew thought it was a joke. A ghost signal. Until they checked the source ID and saw it came from Varkel's ship. Then they didn't laugh anymore. The story spread like infection. From one station to the next, one ship to another, each retelling getting darker, more detailed. Some said the Vexmaw had been boarded by Earth's elite soldiers. Others claimed Earth didn't send soldiers anymore, just one man. Some believed he was a punishment, a prototype gone rogue, something Earth made after growing tired of diplomacy. A few even whispered that Earth didn't lose wars now because they didn't need to win them. They just needed to send him. Those 2 words became more feared than any declaration of war. No one could confirm what it meant. No one who had received it had ever been seen again. A month later, a salvage crew found the Vexmaw adrift near an unstable asteroid field, perfectly intact but dark as a coffin. Not a single crew member responded to hails. No defense systems activated. The ship didn't resist boarding. 3 elite scavengers went aboard first. They found no blood. No signs of battle. Just empty rooms. Weapons still racked. Food half-eaten on trays. Drinks spilled mid-toast. One of the mess tables still had cards laid out in a game paused mid-hand. It was like the crew had simply stopped existing. Except for the bridge. There, the air felt heavier. The consoles were cold but functioning. The AI system was quiet, its core interface locked. The only screen still active displayed a log entry without a timestamp. It simply read, "Final transmission acknowledged." Below that, another line blinked in soft green light. Cleaning done? The scavengers left without taking anything. They didn't touch the cargo. They didn't pry open the armory. They didn't even look for the ship's mainframe. The Vexmaw wasn't abandoned. It had been claimed. And they didn't want to know by what. Word reached Earth eventually. Not through official channels but from the mouths of nervous traders trying to unload stolen Earth tech at below-market prices. One whispered that Earth had unleashed something. Another claimed Earth had finally responded to the galaxy's arrogance the only way it could, by creating something so feared that silence became their new defense system. Earth didn't need fleets anymore. They only needed reputation. And reputation now had a face. A face no one had ever seen clearly. A face no one could describe because the moment you saw it, it was already too late. In a small, forgotten outpost near the edge of the Nomad Belt, a communications officer monitoring deep space chatter caught an encrypted packet bouncing through dead relays. It was small. Old Earth code. He decoded it out of curiosity. What came through was a set of coordinates, followed by a brief message. 2 words. Send him. The officer didn't know what it meant. But when he mentioned it to a passing mercenary ship looking for fuel, the crew stopped everything. Their captain ordered the station abandoned within the hour. They left without paying. No one argued. In the following weeks, multiple pirate networks went dark. Syndicates began issuing internal memos advising their people to avoid any engagement with Earth personnel. A few went further, banning all human prisoners from being taken alive. One powerful cartel went as far as releasing every single human they held in captivity, and sent them home on luxury transports with full compensation, fearing that retaliation would be swift and silent. And every one of them did it not out of guilt or morality. They did it out of fear that a nameless man would appear on their decks one day, eyes unblinking, voice unheard, justice colder than space. Some claimed they had survived him. that they had seen him and lived to tell the story. Most of those were liars, hungry for attention. But one quiet traitor, a man with no name and a voice that trembled when he spoke, gave an account that made even seasoned bounty hunters listen. He said the man doesn't shout, doesn't gloat, doesn't even punish out of rage. He simply fulfills the response Earth encoded into his very existence. He is not a protector. He is not a soldier. He is the consequence. He is the last reply. And when Earth says send him, it means the conversation is over. In time, his legend grew beyond fact. Children on distant moons whispered stories about the Reaper of Earth. Convict captains dared each other to say the phrase in open comms. No one ever did it more than once. Entire criminal outposts installed warning protocols that automatically blocked any Earth transmissions. They didn't want to risk receiving that message. They didn't want to wake something they couldn't put back to sleep. Back on Earth, his name never appeared in the official registry. There were no statues, no medals, no memorials. Only a sealed file buried beneath security layers that no one in the public sector could access. The only label on the file was a code string. The same one from the Vexma logs. Protocol Reaper. Some high-ranking officials denied the program's existence. Others stared too long at the question before changing the subject. The truth was simple. He was never built to return. He was never made to come home. He was made to be sent. And far beyond Earth's orbit, in a black zone where sensors failed and maps ended, a single ship drifted through the darkness. Its origin untraceable. Its purpose unspoken. Inside sat a man. Not resting. Not asleep. Just waiting. His eyes were open, watching nothing. His heartbeat was calm. The ship moved without pilot input, guided by signals that didn't exist on any known frequency. Another transmission arrived. Short. Quiet. Only coordinates. And 2 words. Send him. He stood without a sound. The ship turned silently in space. And somewhere across the galaxy, someone who had laughed at Earth's silence stopped laughing. Because Earth had replied. And this time, they weren't asking for peace. They were sending him. Again.